I can't find anything. The sandpaper is out of control. If you've ever been in this situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So many different grits and no real easy way to find anything. We got to do something different. Stick around, because I got a plan. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. My name is Jeff, and I hope you are having at least a better day than I'm having at this exact moment. I have all this different sandpaper, and I'm trying to find a specific piece for a project I need to do. But the problem is we have all these different grits. We've got wet, dry, we've got coarse grit, 80 grit, 100 grit, 320, 400, all the way up to like, there's some 2500 grit in here, and trying to find the piece you need is a disaster. Some of these are all stacked together from packs that I've opened up in the past. Frankly, I'm kind of tired of it. Sandpaper, sit over here for right now. What I want to do is to build some sort of a storage cabinet with different little compartments that we can put each grit of sandpaper in to help keep things organized. I don't have to try to store them in the packages that they come in. It should work really good, and it'll make it super easy at a glance to find the one that I need. I think it'll also be nice to be able to look at each grit individually, determine how much is left of each one, and make a decision as to whether or not I need to restock. I think once we're done, this project is going to make a huge improvement in the organization and efficiency in storing our sandpaper. It's going to make things so much easier. It's going to be well worth the time to do it. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. I spent a few minutes drawing up a very crude plan just so I have some dimensions of some of the pieces. Helps me not make so many mistakes when cutting if I at least have some dimensions to refer to. I've also tracked down some scraps of 1/2-inch plywood. I think there's enough here to build this little cabinet, especially if I don't make any mistakes because I got a plan. A couple of them have a little bit of a kind of a peeled edge on the veneer, but I think I can work around that. This is some pre-finished stuff that I've used for some other projects, but I think it's going to work perfect for this one. We don't need this thing to be ridiculously overbuilt. 1/2-inch plywood is going to be plenty strong. All we got to do is start cutting it down, which I think is going to be the first challenge. One of the biggest, if not the absolute biggest challenge for me with working with sheet goods of basically any size is the fact that my table saw is so tiny. I just don't have a whole lot of rip capacity for really working with anything. The pieces that I need to rip down are 11 3/4 of an inch wide. That is about all I can squeeze out of this portion of the table saw, so I have to be really careful with setting this up. My little fence barely fits on there, and actually I have to hang part of the latch off of there, so I'm going to have to secure this with some clamps in order to kind of have any hope of keeping things in place. Yes, I know I could get a track saw, and that would really make a big difference, but most of the time I can kind of get by if I'm really careful. Take my time. All right, hopefully that fence stays in place. Sometimes we just got to do what we got to do to get the job done. Well, that didn't work too bad. Got these cut down to width, but now challenge number 2 is going to be, how do I cross-cut these safely to length? I can't do that on the table saw because I just don't have the capacity. I think this time around, I'm going to use my circular saw. Now, is a circular saw ideal? No, it's not ideal, but you can get really good results if you take your time and you do some careful setup and you use some guide blocks to keep your saw going nice and straight. It works fine. Does it take a little longer? Yes, it does, but it's going to be safe, it's going to be accurate because we're going to take our time, and it's going to work just fine. Now, if you're thinking, hey, you own a CNC machine, why don't you just use that? It's going to turn out perfect, everything's going to be to size, and you can do all your joinery all at once. You're absolutely right, I could. But that's not the goal of this video. The goal is to really kind of share with all of you how I tackle challenges like this in working in a small space. And sometimes you just have to get creative, and you can do it with really what I would consider minimal tools. I have a very small table saw. We're going to use a circular saw to finish cutting these down to size, and it's going to work out awesome. So don't worry, because you can still build awesome stuff even if you don't have a giant shop and a big old fancy cabinet saw and all of the bells and whistles. You don't need all that to make some awesome things. So here's all the pieces that are going to make up this little box. These are the side pieces. The way I'm going to assemble this is by using little rabbets. We're going to cut rabbets on the ends of the top and the bottom, and then we can glue this together where the sides will be sort of inset in this little rabbet. Dado? Rabbit. I always get those mixed up. Dado goes through the center. We're going to cut those later. The rabbet is what we're going to cut now using the table saw. To cut these rabbets, I've swapped out the blade on my table saw. Normally, I run a thin kerf combination blade. The thin kerf takes less power to run since this saw doesn't have a lot of power to begin with, but the combination teeth are kind of cut alternately at an angle. Now, normal cuts, if you're cutting all the way through, this is not a big deal. But when you're doing rabbets, since they're cut at an angle, you end up with a little triangle of material, a very tiny triangle left in the center of your cut, which really for a cut or two, you can easily clean that up with a chisel. And it's not that big a deal, but there's a lot of cuts on this particular project, so I wanted to not have to mess with having that little triangle wedge left. This is a full kerf blade, and the teeth are cut square across. They don't alternate. So what that's going to do is it's going to leave a very clean channel. As I cut these rabbets, I'm going to make a pass, and I'll just inch it over ever so slightly until I get to the width that I need, and it's going to leave it nice and clean. I'm going to have no little triangular grooves left that I need to clean up later. That's going to fit really well. Yeah, I like it. I need to cut basically the same rabbet, but around the back edge so that the back panel can kind of inset in there. That's where we're going to get a bunch of strength. It's going to keep this thing from racking from side to side. Since I've already got the saw set up, this should go pretty quick. I just got to remember that I cut these on the right side and not mix it up. With all the rabbets cut, now I need to lay out where I'm going to cut a whole bunch of saw kerfs to accept some dividers. I'll stick down a piece of blue painter's tape, and I'll use that to make all my pencil marks on. That way I don't have to worry about erasing lines or anything right from my piece of wood. I'll use the same full kerf table saw blade to make these cuts. Since the kerf of this blade is 1/8 inch, I'm also going to use 1/8 inch stock to make my dividers, so this should go really quick. I should be able to just adjust the fence on my table saw to line up with the marks on my blue tape, make one pass with each piece, and then readjust until I've made all of the cuts. With all of the pieces cut to size, all the rabbets are cut, and all of the slots are cut that will hold our dividers, we're ready to glue this thing up. I'm going to try to do this all in one shot. Since there's so many rabbets that have to all fit together, this might be a little tricky. I got my glue, I got my clamps, I got a little brush to quickly brush the glue on everything. Let's see if we can pull this off. Let's glue this. Too much glue, spilled some. I spilled some in the little groove there. That's not going to be good. Let's get that cleaned up. Using a little acid brush to spread the glue. A lot of times I don't worry too much about that. I just use my finger, but since I'm trying to be very quick today, because there's so many glue joints, that makes a world of difference. It's just a quick swipe with the brush, and the glue is spread evenly. I'm trying to use the strap clamp to kind of just hold everything together till I can get the other clamps in place. And actually it works really well. Got a damp rag here. Since this is pre-finished plywood, it should clean up really easy. And I want to do that now because I can't really sand this later. Not without damaging the pre-finished plywood anyway. All right, glue's cleaned up. The box came together really well. We're just going to set this aside for a while, let that glue dry, and while it's drying, I'm going to take a little bit of time and cut the dividers that'll separate our sandpaper. We're going to just use some hardboard, cut those down to size, and they're going to slip right in here once this box is dry. To make the dividers, it's going to be super simple because the slots that we cut are an 1/8 inch wide. This is some 1/8 inch thick hardboard, so really all I need to do is to cut these into the individual pieces and bam, they'll be able to slip right into place. Piece of cake. Doesn't some chocolate cake sound good? Oh man. Now I think I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and just lightly sand these corners. I don't really need to sand anything on this pre-finished part, but some of the edges where that plywood's been cut, I do kind of want to sand that, smooth it up just a little bit. You know what that means? I wish I had a sandpaper organizer box. Really, now this box is complete, but there's one thing that I want to do yet before we put this thing to work. I know from using this plywood on previous projects, if I leave these fresh cut edges just bare wood, over time as it gets bumps and nicks on there, it's going to want to splinter that veneer. I've gotten more than my share of splinters from this particular plywood. So what I want to do is apply a couple of coats of lacquer to the entire thing. I'll spray it right over the pre-finished plywood. It's not going to affect anything. It's going to work just fine. But mainly the goal is to seal up these fresh cut edges. It'll help protect the sides, keep myself from getting splinters, which I already have another one. And really, it's gonna look fine. It's gonna be fine. Let's go spray this. Shake well before using. Is that cool or what? With all the dividers in, to kind of help keep things organized so that I know what's what, I printed a bunch of these little 3D printed, just little tags really. These guys will just be able to stick on. They just press on the side. I printed them up for a whole bunch of different grits of sandpaper. We'll be able to move them around, add, remove, change, swap them out if necessary. And it looks kind of neat too. Well, I can tell already that this project is going to be a gigantic improvement over where we started. No more messy stacks and packages of sandpaper. Everything is nice and organized, clearly identifiable, easy to tell how much you have left. Get the one you need. It's just perfect. Well worth the time it took to make it, which really didn't take all that long. You could knock this project out in a day or two. Really not all that difficult, but makes a world of difference in the organization. So I hope you enjoyed following along with this little organizational project. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time. This is so much better. And it looks like I have way less sandpaper too, because now that it's all organized, you can actually see what's there. I need to get restocked on some of this. Whew. Man, it turned out cool though. That's great. Should have done this 3 years ago.